we've been looking at life-changing power encounters that Jesus had with people in his own day, people who had big problems. And when they encountered Jesus, their lives were changed not only in the present moment, but forever. And so I want us to understand these power encounters and how they can make a difference in your life and in my life today. These power encounters are great miracles that Jesus does. Now, remember, there are three different kinds of miracles in the Bible. There's, first of all, the miracles of nature. Jesus stills the storm. There are miracles with people who are healed, see, rise, walk. And there are miracles in the spiritual world. And that's what we're going to look at in this message. Interestingly, Luke begins his gospel with the first miracle, which is a nature miracle, turning water into wine at a wedding in Cana of Galilee. But not Mark. Mark catches us by surprise. His first miracle in the first chapter of his gospel is in the spiritual world. It has to do with the world of angels and of demons. Well, Mark writes the first miracle that we find in his gospel in chapter 1, verse 21. And I want to take this apart verse by verse and word by word and phrase by phrase. So he says, and they went to Capernaum. Well, who are they? Well, he had just called in the first chapter Peter and Andrew and James and John to be his disciples and followers. And they're headed toward their hometown of Capernaum. It's a sleepy little fishing village of 12 to 1,500 people located on the northeastern tip of Lake Galilee. It is about as far away as you could get from the religious and governmental leaders back in the capital in Jerusalem. And Mark tells us that it's the Sabbath, it's Shabbat, it's Saturday. They're gathered together in the synagogue. Synagogue is a gathering place for the people in the Old Testament. Sine means with gathering together. It's not a church. It's a community gathering place. It's a fellowship hall. And people leave their work behind on the Shabbat, on the Sabbath, and they gather together for prayer and for teaching and fellowship. And there's always a leader of these local synagogues, which are just gathering places. They're used for meetings at any time during the week. It was just a facility, a place where people could gather. But there was a leader of the synagogue in each little village, and that leader, when he would hear that there were speakers in town, he would often invite them to come and speak to the people on the Sabbath in the synagogue where they are gathered together. Now, can you imagine this? That the leader gets word that this wandering itinerant rabbi by the name of Jesus is headed to Capernaum. He's headed their way. And he thinks, well, I heard about this person. People here have heard about this person. They say he's a miracle worker, that he's been doing some amazing things. I think I'll invite him to speak on the Sabbath, on Saturday, in our synagogue. So somehow this meeting must take place where this leader comes and he says, you know, I'm the head of the local synagogue here in Capernaum, and I think our people would really benefit and value if you would come and teach us. Tell us what's on your mind. And Jesus accepts. And Mark tells us that the teaching of Jesus astonished the people. He held them spellbound. They were hanging on every word. I would have loved to have been there. I would have loved to have sat at the feet of Jesus and listened to his voice and listened to him teach. And Mark tells us when he was teaching, the people sensed that he was filled with authority, with exousia, out of, exit, door, out of, exousia, essence or being. He is teaching out of his essence, out of his being, of who he is. In contrast, Mark says, to the scribes who were teaching a set of duties and rules and regulations, obligations, all designed to place people in a position of special status or standing or favor before God, but not Jesus. He's speaking out of his being. The scribes, they were dry as dust, but not Jesus. They had never heard anyone speaking truth like this. He was talking about things that really mattered in their lives. His words went straight to their heart. His words drew them closer to God himself. And all is going well. They're getting closer to God. They're understanding who he is. They're making a connection. He's teaching them about who his Father is. And all of a sudden, this meeting is dramatically interrupted. Mark writes in verse 23 of chapter 1, and immediately there was in their synagogue a man with an unclean spirit, and he cried out. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, in the crowd that day, there's a man who starts screaming and yelling and cursing and swearing and shouting and calling Jesus filthy names, and he's foaming at the mouth. He is under the power, Mark tells us, of an unclean spirit. Now, what is an unclean spirit? Well, before God created the physical world, the world you and I live in, there was the spiritual world. And in that spiritual world, God created spiritual beings. They were called numinata. They don't have bodies. They're not limited to time and space. They don't die. They're greater than us, but they're less than God. And there was a big problem with some of these spiritual beings. There were angels. In the Greek, it's angelos. They live in a place called heaven. They existed before we existed. Their primary function was to praise God and to serve God and to worship God. They were to attend to God. And oftentimes in our world, they're messengers of God. And there are a lot of them. Jesus said that if he wanted to, he could call down 12 legions of angels. That would be about 72,000 angels. And of these angels, there are 3 archangels, 3 angels that are in charge of various functions for the angels. There is Gabriel. We know Gabriel, the angel of the good news. He has a trumpet in his hand, and he appears to Mary and to Elizabeth to announce the birth of Jesus. There is Michael. He is the angel of judgment. He has a sword in his belt. When you see Michael coming, you know there's some bad news headed your way. And then there was the 3rd archangel. There are various names for this archangel, but one of them we find is Lucifer. And Lucifer fell away from God. The real question, theologically, in the Bible, when we ask about fallenness and sinfulness, is not why did Adam fall? The real question is why did Lucifer fall? Why did these spiritual beings who had everything in a perfect place and perfect intimacy and connection with God, why did they fall? Well, we don't have to look too far because we know that what they wanted to be was they wanted to be God. They wanted to have power. They wanted to be in control. Look at me. I'm in charge here, not God. And that was the temptation that they made to Adam and Eve in the garden. So when they fell and wanted to be God, God cast them out of heaven and sent them to a place of utter darkness, Tartarus, a place where the damned go, is a deep abyss filled with evil spirits, unrelenting horror. One of the things about hell is that it's utter, complete darkness. And you live in this place of utter darkness with these evil beings forever. And down there is this archangel Lucifer or Beelzebub or Satanas. He is the supreme ruler of the fallen angels. He is the prince of the powers of darkness. He is the prince of the world of the demons, the lesser world. You see, when Lucifer fell, he took a lot of bad angels with him. And that's where we enter into this story here with these unclean spirits. They are called demons or unclean spirits, and they dwell in this place of hell forever. And here they make an appearance in our world in the life of a man. Mark chapter 1 verse 24 writes that they cry out to Jesus, out through this man in a loud shouting voice. Then they have 2 questions. What have you to do with us? Notice it's the plural there. There's the many. And their second question is, have you come to destroy us? Do you want to put us out of business, to take away our power? And that implies, those 2 questions, that they understand and recognize who Jesus is and the reality of sin and fallenness and the consequences of that. That's what they're worried about, the consequences of who they are and what they're doing. And notice they call him Jesus of Nazareth, his common name, his human name, his earthly name. But one of the demons cries out something else. He says, I know who you are, in the singular, one demon. I know you are the Holy One of God. The Holy One of God is the Old Testament title of God, one of the titles. Holy, unique, special, set apart, pure, flawless. You're not a human being. You are sent by God as his Holy One. You see, this one demon recognizes the true identity of Jesus. He knew that Jesus was about an ultimate mission. He knew more about that mission and who Jesus Christ was than anybody else there that day, more than the scribes or more than the Pharisees or the people in Galilee. The demon knew who Jesus was. Demons do know who God is and who Jesus is, and that they're fallen and that Jesus has come to save us. They are absolutely convinced of who Jesus is and of his saving power, and that he's going to put them out of business and destroy them. And they shudder in terror there in hell because Jesus is going to do business with them. So this one demon knows who Jesus is. Luke writes in chapter 11, verse 20, "But if I drive out demons by the finger of God, then you will know that the kingdom of God has come to you." Luke is saying, how do you know who I am? Jesus. If I have the power over demons, you know that I have the power of God within me. You see, interestingly, in the Old Testament, we find miracles of nature and we find miracles of people being healed. But there's one category that's noticeably absent in the Old Testament, and that is this issue of the spiritual world of demons. We don't find a mention of spiritual activity in the Old Testament of the demons. But in the New Testament, we find this outburst of demonic activity surrounding Jesus. They are Simeon, signs, pointing the way, validating his authority and his power, his person and his message. God is at hand. The finger of the Spirit of God has come. It is here. It is present now, right now, this very moment, in this synagogue in Capernaum. We find these words in 1 John chapter 3, verse 8. The reason the Son of God appeared was to destroy the devil's work. Well, we know that Jesus came to save us from our sins and the history of salvation, but there's a deeper problem that had to be solved. First of all, the fundamental problem was in the world of the spiritual beings who caused this sinfulness and this fall in the first place. And the reason Jesus came, his primary mission here on planet Earth, was to destroy the works of the devil. This is an epic battle, a clash of two great kingdoms, the kingdom of good and the kingdom of evil, the kingdom of light and the kingdom of darkness. And it is taking place right here in this synagogue in Capernaum this very moment. So he rebukes the demons by saying, "Be silent. You are not in control here any longer. I am." And he looks at the man who is screaming and shaking, and he says, "Come out of him. Exalthe. I've been looking for you since the fall of Satan. I've been looking for you since Lucifer betrayed God and went his own way and wanted to be God. You knew I was coming. And now I'm here and I have absolute authority. So get out of him right now." This clash of these two great kingdoms is taking place this very moment through this man's life. And the unclean spirit was shaking the man violently. He's crying out, Mark tells us, in a loud voice. When Jesus says, "Come out of him," this demon screams and yells, and all of a sudden, there's silence. We move from the chaos of the demons to the calm in a man's heart. He is set free. He has new life. There is a power to transform him that has been given through the voice and the power and the exousia and the authority of Jesus. So Mark tells us in verse 27, the people were amazed and they questioned among themselves, "What is a new teaching like this with authority that he commands the unclean spirits and they obey him?" What is this new teaching? Who is this person? I mean, even the demons obey his voice and his commands. He has restored a man to full life. He speaks with exousia, with authority. Even the unclean spirits obey him, and they are absolutely astonished at what's taken place that moment in that synagogue in Capernaum. Now, when we see these kinds of miracles, we understand that they function on two levels. First, there is the present moment. This man has a big problem, and he's been dealing with that problem alone all of his life. And here Jesus comes and says, "You are not alone. I am with you. This is not your fight, it's my fight. I am the Holy One of God, sent by God. I am the Alpha. I am the Omega, the beginning and the end. I am your advocate. I will fight for you. I will overcome evil in your life." So I see Jesus going to the man and taking his hand and telling him, "I love you. I love you. You are released from your fears and from the powers that have possessed you. Go immediately. I have set you free from the tyranny of the past. I send you into the peace of the present and the inner calm of the future. You will have tranquility and peace in your life, love and power and a sound mind." He is set free. In the present moment, this man has been set free from that which binds him, from that which he has been carrying around with him all of his life. I want to talk to you about backpacks for just a moment. When I was younger, in my 20s and 30s, I was out in Colorado, and I wanted to climb the 14,000-foot mountains. They're really high mountains. When you go skiing, you're generally around 8, 9, 10, maybe 11,000 feet. But anything above 10,000 feet, you're above the tree line. There's a reason why trees and plants and things can't grow above 10,000 feet, because there's not enough oxygen. That's where the real climb begins. Well, a friend of mine and I decided to climb our first 14,000-foot mountain, our first 14er. And we knew it would take us a couple days, so we packed up these big backpacks with blankets and a tent and food and clothing, and we headed out Half Moon Gulch. We were going to climb Mount Elbert, which is the highest mountain in the Rockies. And so we camped out about 8,000 or 9,000 feet on the first night. We were going to summit the mountain the next day. It was not a technical climb. It was perfectly doable. It was just going to take a lot of energy. So that morning, early at the crack of dawn, we put our backpacks on and we headed up the mountain, just climbing over the boulder fields and the scree fields, just making our way somewhere towards the top. Well, at about 10, 11,000 feet, we realized that our backpacks were too heavy for us. If we carried them on our backs, we were not going to make it all the way up to the top. There was just too much baggage in there. There were things in there that we did not need to get us to the top. So we took them off and put them down. It was simply too much weight for us to carry. And we summited the mountain. We made it to the top. We signed our names there and got registered and were celebrated and so forth. But we knew that we couldn't make it with that kind of weight on our back. Isn't it interesting that all of us have backpacks that we carry around on our backs, loaded with stuff that weight us down, that we really don't need, that we carry around that hold us back? So, sometimes they get real heavy. Broken relationships, broken dreams, unexpected failures, the fear of an uncertain future. They're heavy and weighty, and they just pull us down. We all have backpacks that we carry around with us. One of the backpacks that I've noticed that we carry around with us that weigh us down and limit us from reaching the full potential and summiting our mountaintops in our lives is the backpack of the family of origins. Our family of origins, generation after generation of generation, that get us to be who we are today. And some of that's very good, very positive stuff, but some of it's just excess baggage that pulls us down. I can remember visiting a church one Sunday that did dramas as part of their worship service. And the drama this day was that there was an elderly woman that came walking down the aisle of the church carrying a very heavy backpack. She was all bent over. You could tell that she was the grandmother. And she made her way up to the stage and sat down and took her backpack off and set it down in front of her. Well, The next person coming down the aisle, you could tell, was her daughter. And her daughter was carrying a backpack that was twice the size of her mother. And she could barely make it down the aisle. She made it up onto the stage, sat down in the chair next to her mother and set it down and opened it up. And in there was her own backpack and a replica of her mother's backpack, that she had been carrying her mother's backpack as well, of unresolved issues of her mother. A third woman came down. She was young. She was the daughter's daughter. And she was dragging this backpack that was 3 times the size of her grandmother and her mother. She pulled it up on the stage, got herself up there, got in a chair, put it down in front of her. And when she opened it up, not only did she have her own backpack of issues and weights and heaviness, but she had the backpack of her mother and the backpack of her grandmother. This is what the family of origin backpack looks like, that we carry around the weight from those who have gone before us. And again, in many ways, they've given us very good things, and in some ways, there are things that just were not resolved that carried over now into our lives. And what Jesus would have us do was to get rid of the backpacks, take them off, put them away, get free, get released. You see, God sent the Holy One of God to take our backpacks and to put them on his back, to set us free, like he did that man in the present moment, from the tyranny of our greatest needs, our biggest problems, and our highest fears. He is saying, leave them here with me. I have come to bring peace and calm and light and goodness into your life in the middle of an uncertain world. And once he does take those backpacks, he doesn't want us to put them back on ever again. Never. This man is freed. So there's that present reality, and then there's the eternal truth. And the eternal truth that's taking place here is that Jesus has come to fight this great battle, this epic battle between good and evil, between light and darkness. The Holy One of God has come. And he's come to defeat evil once and for all, to telestai. It is finished. And when he does that, he provides for us a home in heaven with him forever. Our eternal destiny is secured. Our eternal destiny will be filled with light and joy and peace and love and power. He wins. Evil is real, but it is not ultimate. It is not absolute. It is not final. God is. Jesus wins the day here at this moment in this synagogue in Capernaum in Galilee. Now, there's 2 takeaways. The so what's. You know, the Lord's Prayer tells us, give us this day. This day God provides for us. So what is it that God would have us do this day? What is the takeaway for us? Well, I'm going to ask you to do 2 things. 1, identify what's in your backpack that's weighing you down and holding you back. Identify that one area of your life in which it has a hold on you. You find yourself constantly dwelling upon it. It's holding you back, and it's keeping you from getting to the top of the mountain in your life. And the second thing I'd like you to do is I'd like you to release it, to let go of it, to take that backpack off and set it down at the feet of Jesus. Sometimes imagery can help us to do that. Maybe you need to take whatever that is and write it down on a piece of paper and put it in a box and throw it away, or burn it up, or get rid of it. Throw it in the ocean. Get rid of it. See that you're letting go of it. And the way that you let go of that is you place it in the hands of Jesus, and Jesus then takes our backpack, our weight, our heaviness, and he puts it on his back once and for all. And when he does that, he destroys it. And when he destroys it, there is freedom in that. Remember, with this man, it is not his fight, it is the fight of the Holy One of God. It's not our fight, it's God's fight against the forces of evil. Let him have it. Let him fight that fight. Let go. He wants to set us free. And if you've never known him like that, the freeing power of Jesus from that which weighs us down, like this man was held captive in bondage by these demons, know that Jesus comes in power and authority, exousia, to transform our lives, to connect us with God, so that we can live our lives for all of eternity with the Holy One of God in his presence. That's God's desire this day for you and for me.